Alright guys, so I just got the tires and I'm getting really nervous because these are huge in comparison to the previous ones. I didn't think it was going to be that much of a difference, but like before you could see the whole inside of this bead right here, and now it's completely gone. Same thing for the front. I mean, the good thing is that it's covering a lot more of the wheel itself, but it's just way too huge. So I'm kind of worried that it's not gonna clear anymore. Yeah, that fills in the gap by a lot. Only thing I could do is try it. It's gonna most likely pull this too much where it's gonna crack it even more, because I already cracked it by accident because I had to drive the car. My rear suspension wasn't working, I had to move it, and I messed up this right here. Now it has a lot more protection, which is good. I like meaty tire setups. I've ran a setup for such a long time that I've just gotten tired of it. I love meaty tire setups, it just looks a whole lot better. Alright guys, as you can see, this was a really bad idea. Just to save a few bucks. These tires are for sure way too big for this setup. As you can see, it is pulling this away right here, outward. That's not gonna work. Same thing for the other side. It is also pulling it right here out, so it's not gonna work. Alright guys, so I raised it back up. Luckily nothing happened, everything's fine, everything went back into place how it was before. So I'm gonna go ahead and look for some tires, and I'll probably just pick it up back later once I find them. But yeah, these are way too wide. So I'm looking around right now. I'm trying to find some 245/35 again, though that's what I had previously on here. This is 255/40/20, because as you see, it still went down, just it sits a lot higher. And I was actually thinking about going back to maybe 30, because 30 would make the car look lower, but I don't like how the car drives with 30s. When I'm driving, I can feel like every single rock that I touch on the floor. And I'm not even exaggerating, like I can literally feel like everything on the floor when I have small skinny tires on there. That's why I don't want to go back to the 30 sidewall. But if I find some 30s, I might just go with it. Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. I picked up this gimbal and I'm really excited about it because it's like following me around, and it's pretty sick. Instead of just like walking around with my camera everywhere, it's gonna make the footage look a lot better and cleaner. Now moving forward, let's go ahead and talk about the main purpose on why you most likely clicked on this video. It's because you want to find out what wheel specs are going to work on your Z, how it looks, what issues you may run into, especially when it comes to the Akebono BBK, tire, wheel specs, stuff like that. Everything affects it. So those previous clips that I included, I wanted to show you guys why it's important to run a specific tire setup depending on your wheel setup. Specifically in my case, going to a bigger tire setup is just not going to work with my current wheel setup. I'm running 20 times 10.5 in the front with -10 offset, and I had to go back to 245/35 in order to work. 255/40 was too big. Just the sidewall I think was too big in general because it was hitting the tire as soon as it went down. And then in the rear, I am running a 20 times 11.5, 275/35/20, and it's flush fitment, fender to lip. So there's going to be a lot of things that you guys got to watch out for, and I want to talk about those things to try to help out the community so you guys know what to look out for and what to get if you want to get a specific type of setup. If you want to get like a meaty setup, I'll try to help you guys out in this video because I had a meaty setup on my Z a long time ago and I ended up getting rid of it, and I got these work wheels that I have right here, but I would love to go back to a meaty setup just because the stance life honestly gets pretty boring. Especially having such skinny tires with my setup. Then I'll also talk about why I don't like my setup and why I would go with a different setup if I could in the future. Now, first thing that we're going to go ahead and talk about is stock wheels. For the 370Z, all of the stock wheels fit, including with the BBK. And I have experience with this because my 370Z is actually a touring model and it came with 18s from factory. And I upgraded it to Rays at one point, and then I went to Cosmes, and then I went to my work wheels that I have currently on the car right now. Now, they all fit. So the base 18s worked with the BBK. It cleared barely, but it still cleared. Now, if you grab 18s from another car, for example, a G37 that doesn't have BBK, I promise it will not fit. A lot of wheels will not fit with that setup. Why? It's because they're too big, they stick out too far, and they hit the wheel on the spokes. And that's the issue that I ran with my Cosmes as well. Had no issues with my 18s because that was the first upgrade that I did on my Z, was upgrade my BBK. And with my 18s, it fit perfectly fine. Went to the Rays, had no issues. But as soon as I went to my Cosmes, I had to add a 15mm spacer, which pushed out the wheel a little bit too far, which did not look so great. I had to stretch out the tire really bad, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to stay with the meaty setup, but I had to stretch it due to the aggressiveness of the wheels that I had at the time, which were the Cosmes. It looked great, honestly. I had a meaty tire setup in the rear. I had 18 times 11 in the front and also the rear. But the front, I had to go ahead and run a spacer. And the offset was like +8, I think it is. When I did that, it pushed out the wheel too far. I didn't know a lot about stretch tire setups at that time. I didn't care too much about it, but it's something that I had to do. And when it comes to the rear, I had absolutely no issues. So on that setup, I had 18 times 11 all around. It looked sick. As you can see from the pictures, it looked really meaty. It was 18s. But when it comes to 18s, you gotta run a really fat tire setup. You can't do 35s, you can't do 30s. It's just gonna look so weird. It's gonna be so low. You're gonna hit the ground and it just looks bad. Like, it looks like the wheels are way too small for that car. At that time, I was running 305/40, and the front I was running like a 255/40. So you will have to amp up the tire when it comes to 18s, even to a 45, to make it look a lot better. Is it possible with BBK? It is. But you may have to relocate, the little weights that they add when balancing the tire. You may have to relocate those, because when I installed my 18s, they had put the little weights like right where the caliper's at. And every time I was driving and the wheel would turn, I would hear like shh, shh, shh. So you have to be careful on that. So I went back, I had them relocated to the rear, and everything was good. If you don't have BBK with 18s, you should have no issues running them at all. Just make sure your tire setup is good. I would highly suggest going with 18 times like a 9.5 if you have BBK, because then if you do have to add a spacer, it won't stick out as much like it did on my car. And when I went ahead and added the front wheels, 18 times 11, I did have to roll the fender and push it out a little bit more for it to clear properly. So you may have to do that as well if you plan on running an aggressive setup. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the best wheel setup, in my opinion, and why I wouldn't go with my wheel setup. Now, the thing with my wheel setup and what I like about it is the fitment is amazing. So my fitment is flush fender to lip fitment from the front and the back. I did not have to add any spacers. Everything was good, but you do have to be mindful of the disc. If you're getting aftermarket wheels, you have to run a high disc, and that gives you a high probability of it clearing. But I have seen high disc wheels that still do not clear BBK. And I know that from experience because I had a few friends that had a high disc. They tried to install their wheels and it still didn't clear, but it had to do with the spoke design. So the biggest thing you gotta look out for is the spoke design. If the spoke is like too sharp, and I'll try to show you guys right now on the Z what I mean by too sharp, it just goes straight in, it's gonna hit. But it has like some type of curve, you're not gonna have an issue, and I'll show you guys right now on my Z what that looks like. Alright, now let's go ahead and look at my Z and the wheels I have on here. If you look at the spoke design, as you can see, it curves in like that, so it has enough space for the caliper to clear. If your wheel design is more up here, like in the back, and the spoke goes in like that at a slant, there's a huge chance it's going to hit the caliper. So that's why I'm saying the spoke design is important when you're picking out wheels, because it may or may not fit depending on that. Luckily for me, I have no issues because 1, it's a high disc, 2, the spoke design goes in like that. So I've seen other guys that pick up, wheels and it has like a high disc, but because their spoke design is going in like that, it still hit the caliper, and they just had to add like a really small spacer in order for it to clear the BBK. But let's say you have a medium disc or a low disc, there's a huge probability that you will need a large spacer in order for it to fit. And if you don't have BBK, you won't have to worry about that, but then you got to keep in mind your wheel specs. If you got wheel specs like this, you're going to get this type of fitment, and then you got to think about your offset. I have -10 offset. It doesn't matter if it's 18s, 19s, or 20s. If you have -10 offset on your wheel, you will get somewhat close to this type of fitment if it's a 10.5. Now, if you go to a like 9, or you go with like a 10 or a 9.5, you will want to go ahead and increase your offset to push out a little bit more to get fitment like this. Now, if you want your wheel to sink in more and not have so much of like a fender to lip fitment, you will have to go ahead and go with like a lower offset. So if you go to like 0, or even if you go to like a 10, most commonly I see a lot of people go with like a 10 to 20 offset to be able to run like a meteor tire setup without having stretch tires. So that would be really up to you guys on what you want to achieve. But usually if you run a higher offset in the positives, like 10 or above to 20, then you'll be able to run like a meteor tire setup versus a stretch setup like this. In my case, like I mentioned, this is -10, 10.5, -10 over here, 11.5. And this one sticks out a little bit further from that one over there due to the 11.5 size. Now, for those of you guys that want a setup like this, that is fender to lip in the front and the back, this is honestly perfect. But you will have to run skinny tires. I would honestly recommend a 30 sidewall versus a 35 that I have. In the front, it's way too skinny for my liking. But if you don't care about the functionality, you're more about a stance car, then I highly suggest going with like a 30 and go with 20s for the stance life. So you just have to accommodate for the size technically. The smaller of a wheel you go, the higher of a tire size you should get. Vice versa, the larger of a wheel you get, 20, then a smaller tire size you would want to get. All right, now based off of what we went over, what do I personally think? Because obviously your guys' opinion is going to be different from mine. But it may apply to a lot of you guys as well, depending on what you're looking for, especially because I've had my Z for years. I've changed my mind on a lot of things that I like and dislike about the car. This will help a lot of you guys out on determining what is going to be the best wheel setup for your car, depending on what you're looking for. Now, none of them are bad. They can all look good if you have the right tire setup, if you know what kind of wheels you're looking for. Some wheels look really sick in 20s, some look better in 19s, some look better in 18s. It just depends on what look you're trying to achieve. Now, if you're looking for more of that stance look, fender to lip fitment, I would say 20s and 19s are your go-to. 20s, you're just gonna have to run a smaller tire. 19s, you can run a little bit of a fatter tire. In my personal opinion, what do I think is the best wheel setup for your car? And it's gonna have to be 19s or 18s. 19s or 18s are gonna be your best wheel and tire setup because you can run a larger tire. The wheel fits in really nicely without having to worry about clearance and how low your car sits, especially on bags. As with 20s, you are going to have to run that really low profile tire, and you're not going to have a lot of clearance to go, to a bigger sidewall, and your car is going to sit really high from the ground. It's not going to look like it's on air. In my case, if I would have gone with 40s, I would have had like a 3-inch gap in the front aired out. Right now I have about a 2-inch. If I go down to a 30, I have like a 1-inch to almost no gap in the front at all. Now let me go ahead and talk about why I don't like my wheel setup. I don't like it because of those reasons I just mentioned. Tire sizes, I can't go bigger to absorb a lot of the impacts out on the road. Bigger tires absorb a lot more impact and are great for daily use, and it just looks sick as well in general. So 19s and 18s for sure are going to be for those guys that want to run a more meaty tire setup and also want to have a good fitment without having to sacrifice, clearance in the wheel well. 20s take up a lot of the inner wheel well, and it doesn't give you a lot of adjustability to go any lower. I'm gonna go ahead and name off a few brands and or wheels that I feel like look the best on these cars. And I would honestly say TE37s, everybody loves TE37s. You can't go wrong with it. The offsets that they have available for those wheels and how it just fits on these cars looks so sick. And the clearance, it clears a lot of brake calipers with no problem. So there's a reason why they are so like sought out for and why a lot of people want them, is they just give it that racing look. And you can also add an aggressive tire setup and it still fits with no problem. It's just the go-to wheel, honestly. You also have gram lights. Gram lights look super sick. I love how they look with the spoke design, how it just, you know, has that offset and it sticks out, and it also creates that like nice concave on it. You can't go wrong with gram lights either. So I would say those are my two favorite wheels for these cars. Meisters, you can also get Meisters. It clears the Akibonos. You can go with a 19 with a meaty tire setup and it looks really sick. It looks baller. That's one wheel for sure I would love to get for this car. It would be between those three options that I just gave you. Other options that look really sick, NKs look really sick with the meaty tire setup. Stock wheels, the Nismo V1s are like the best setup for these cars that a lot of people love and get, but they are now like way too overpriced, if I'm being honest with you. I think back in the day when I was looking for some Nismo V1s, you could get it for like 1,500. People want like 2,500 now, which is insane how much people want. Same thing for the Rays. When I got it at the time, I got it for like 500 bucks. Now people want over $1,000 for the Sport Rays, which is insane, honestly. But those are honestly go-to wheels that I would suggest, because they're 19s. You can get them in a 19. Good wheel, brake caliper clearance, can add aggressive tire setups, and they look really sick, without a doubt. But offsets, now let's talk about offsets a little bit. I would highly suggest like a 20 offset for the front, and or possibly close to 15. You can get away with it. Rear, I would suggest like an 8 to 10 to have that aggressive setup and still be able to run a fat tire. And you can still run like an 11 and a half with that 8 offset. And for the front, you can possibly run like a 10 to 9 and a half with that 20 offset. That'll still look good and still have good clearance. Those are my offsets and what I recommend. Of course, yours is gonna change because you may want that poke, you may not want that poke. The offsets that I just gave you are like right spot on where you can still fit a fat tire on there and it looks good without poking too much. Mine pokes out way too aggressively. Like this is a fender. When I'm aired up, the wheel literally sticks out like this far. Now, if you go with the offsets I gave you, it'll put it like right at the fender or a little bit before, so you can have that nice flush fitment that you're looking for, if that's what you want. But hopefully this helps you guys out. I know I try to provide a lot of information in this videos to help you guys out. If you guys have any suggestions on wheel setups or something that you're currently running, feel free to add it down in the comments below. Sharing your information is really helpful to others, but if you guys would like to share it, go ahead and share it down below, add your Instagram, whatever, so people can go ahead and check it out. Just trying to help out the community as much as possible while I still have the Z. I'm going to be putting out a lot more videos. I have another one on the way that I'm trying to finish up possibly later today or tomorrow. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.